Hey, what's good? This is another Bite Down Boxing video. I'm the host of the Bite Down Boxing podcast, RL Woodson, or just Wood. And obviously, this week we have one of the top pound for pound fighters in the world, current WBO welterweight champion, Terence Bud Crawford, faces Jose Benavidez Jr. this Saturday night. And, we're coming upon the fight night, and we haven't seen a whole lot of marketing and promotion for the fight, and it's a lot going on with boxing, with all of the announcements and the new platforms, etc., etc. And we're constantly going back and forth about the best promoters or the best promotional companies, so on and so forth. And so anyway, it just so happens to be I'm home today, and I haven't seen a whole lot of Terence Crawford commercials and ads and whatnot running on ESPN. But one thing is, I don't watch ESPN on cable, and I haven't been able to watch a lot of college football this year, so I don't know what happened this past weekend. If there was a lot of Crawford Benavidez Jr. ads. I honestly don't know. But anyway, I was wondering, it just so happens I was wondering, like, is ESPN going to have them on, most of their shows this week? Or, are they going to be doing, is he going to be on radio? How are they going to, what are they going to do to get the word out and to, raise the profile or the awareness of Crawford? Being that he's a crucial piece of their boxing business with Top Rank. So anyway, I'm home, and it just so happens that they have a segment coming up on this morning's First Take with Stephen A., Max Kellerman, and Molly Karim. And okay, let me check this out. Molly Karim's first question is something along, I'm paraphrasing, but it's something about, you call yourself the best in the game. Where do you fit in all time? Where do you rank all time? And I'm sorry. You see, I got my Michigan and my Block M on, so no disrespect to Jalen Rose and the Fab Five forever, all of that. But where does that question come from? Like, he's fighting Jose Benavidez Jr. And I didn't have the best questions this past weekend at the Worlds Collide event, but I'm running around in areas where I don't have access to be or where I'm not permitted to be, and I happen to run into a couple of different boxers, and I sneak in a quick interview. So yeah, I wasn't my sharpest, but we're talking about a planned day, a planned interview, a planned segment for First Take, the First Take panel, and Bud Crawford. Where does this question come from? No disrespect to her, but we've never heard you really talk about boxing. We don't even know what your top 3, your top 5 all-time boxers would be. So, like, did you think you asked a question that us boxing fans want to know? Did you think we cared about that particular? It just seemed like just let me throw this in here. It was really no basis to it. Then, Stephen A., I believe, gets into Errol Spence Jr. Fair question, that matchup. And he prefaced it, we don't know much about Benavidez. You probably win here looking down the road. No issue with Stephen A.'s question. Max, it gets to Max, and Max asked a little bit of something about current stuff, but then finishes off the segment with Crawford's reaction and thoughts on Khabib Nurmagomedov's meltdown and post-fight brawl and so on, his behavior after his fight Saturday night against Conor McGregor. What does that have to do with boxing? And then it's something like, well, would you do that after your fight? What does that have to do with Terence Crawford? And he said some stuff about, Crawford is a nasty guy in the ring. I mean, he's a fierce competitor, he's aggressive, and what so on and so forth. But what is that? And maybe Max is just dumbing it down because of who I'm with, who I'm having, the party, the present company that I'm in. They just mailed it in. But I'm just saying, and I mentioned this, I might speak on it on this week's podcast that I'm trying to put together. But, again, and I'll say it real quick. It's a pretty good, a very thoughtful article out there from some lawyer named Imhoff, last name Imhoff, Boxing Esquire blog, or it's a blog out there by this guy. Had a very thoughtful piece about there being a move. This is the perfect time for boxing to move to a one governing body or universal governing body, and doing away with the four sanctioning bodies and making all these different changes and suggesting that maybe one television contract is the best way to go so that the growth of the sport is there. We'll get into some of that on the podcast possibly. But he opened this whole thing about all of these changes that boxing needs to make based on he cited some conversation or some radio spot on Fox Sports between NBA guy Chris Broussard and Mr. Rob Parker, who if you've been watching this sports talk stuff for the last 8 years, tell me where Rob Parker is on your list of your top 5 right now of guys in that do this for a living. Tell me where Rob Parker ranks for you, because he's not in my top 5. Don't know if he'd be in my top 10, but I don't know ill will towards Rob Parker. But the issue that Imhoff calls out, or the example that he calls out, is Broussard and Parker, who have a weekend radio show. They talked about they were hitting on the HBO exit from boxing, and said it was the nail in the coffin for boxing. Totally oblivious to all of the stuff all of the activity and the growth of boxing right now, all of the people coming in the door for boxing as HBO is exiting. And so they laugh it up, I guess. And then Imhoff calls out that this is a knock against boxing somehow because these two guys don't know that their own radio station or the parent company has the new deal with the PBC. And again, it's like so to start your argument on what boxing needs to do, to start it based on what some non-boxing guys are talking about, how is that the launching point for how we need to fix boxing? Like, I feel like some of the changes he suggested, not to stick on it right now, but some of the changes he suggested is to bring new people in the door. And then at the end of the day, I might be a super casual, to be honest, but us people that have been rocking with boxing all this time and invest all this time in it on the weekends, we'd probably be a little disappointed in the changes, the improvements. It'd probably take us backwards for many of us. But anyway, last point. I'm already 3 minutes past what I want to do. But it's just, if we have all of these new partners in boxing, and shout out to DAZN for kind of being different in their deal with Ak and Barack, bringing them on from This Is 50 and presenting boxing, some backstory pieces in a different manner, from an unconventional angle, I guess. But for Fox and ESPN, if you can't get some competent people to do the boxing interviews, if you can't figure out a way to ask some good questions and put a guy like and figure out a way to make a guy like Terence Crawford, who's not the most charismatic guy, he's just not. But if you can't figure out a way to do that, then how can you parade these guys out here and expect the public, the general public, to get to have any interest in these guys? It's just not going to happen. So again, what I just tweeted out a couple of times yesterday in a lengthy or a chain tweet was, ESPN could take a little bit of money and find some of these top 3, top 5 guys out here on YouTube the internet journalists. There's got to be a handful of them. They have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. You could put a little bit of resources into one of these guys or two of these guys, and let them create the content and work with them, develop them, polish them up, show them, get it into the ESPN, Fox Sports quality and the polish on it, and in the presentation. But let some guy, go talk to Terence Crawford in training camp. Do some compressed or miniature 24/7 all access type program. Get him around Bo Mac. I mean, Bo Mac is doing analysis now on the top ranked shows. Show those guys, do a little. And that's the thing. If we can't get a television show, a weekly television show, a monthly show at 11:30 at night, where we're going to talk about boxing on ESPN, well, then do it digitally and just put it on the website. But there could be some small investment to where, we shouldn't struggle to know who some of these guys are come Saturday or Friday night sometimes. Come weekend when it's fight night, we shouldn't struggle to know who some of these guys are. There should be some kind of coverage that's connecting all of this, especially when we're talking about boxing during college football and NFL during those regular seasons. So it's just doing a disservice to it, in my opinion. And there could have been a much better way to have some coverage on this Crawford Benavidez Jr. fight. Another thing, lastly, what was wrong with bringing Jose Benavidez on? I know he's the B-side, but he is a top-ranked fighter, I believe. What's wrong with bringing him on so we can get to know who he is in case he does win somehow? But he's the one that's talked this fight into fruition. He might be the mouthpiece. I mean, why not have a segment with him? Maybe it's some people that want to root for him. Maybe it's some people that want to root for the underdog. Maybe it's again, I really don't even know Benavidez Jr. I think I've seen him fight once or twice. So maybe they should have had those two sitting side by side, and maybe something interesting would have been said instead of Bud sitting there struggling, to think of something to say, as Max kind of pressed him about the Nurmagomedov situation. Man, that dude, Habib. But maybe you could have done something. But I don't know. That's just my thoughts for the day. I'm about 7 minutes longer than what I wanted to be. Check out the Bite Down Boxing podcast. Should be getting one up maybe Friday night based on one guest that I was working on. Again, down in the comments, please subscribe to the channel. Even though this is the Pay Me No Mind channel, this is where I'll be doing the Bite Down Boxing videos. But down in the comments, let me know if you think the ball is being dropped on the coverage of boxing. And, can these new partners to boxing, should they? I heard in that Fox deal with the PBC that there was some kind of shoulder programming. What's her name? Jordan Hardy, I believe. Caleb Plant's woman. She has some little video, the PBC Jabs thing. Do something like that. It doesn't have to be a 30-minute production. But put somebody that's passionate about the sport, who knows how fans are following the sport, what's making people tune in. Put somebody out there that can present that and not have us out here looking like we follow some garbage. I mean, I've been jealous of all the UFC program in the last 8 to 10 years where they have panels and they have studios and all of that stuff, graphics, and it's some real in-depth discussions. You get to know all of these different guys. It should be no different for boxing. So again, this is Wood, Bite Down Boxing. I'm out.